So in this session, we will be seeing about the loads in a building. What are the loads required? What are the criteria we have to take care while designing a building? Then types of loads, the dead load calculation as per IS 875 Part 1, live load calculation as per IS 875 Part 2, wind load calculation as well as per IS 875 Part 3. And I have because seismic is a vast topic, so I have covered a little bit of seismic calculation also, and we will be taking care of looking about load combinations. These are the essential things you have to know while designing a building. So now, loads in a building. So structural loads are actions or forces, deformations or accelerations applied to structure components. So yesterday we saw about columns, beams, everything. So the forces and actions applied to these structural components. So loads causes stress and deformations and displacements in structures. So structural loads are an important consideration in the design of buildings. And we have various building codes required that structures be designed and built to safely resist all actions they are likely to face during their service life, while also remaining fit for use also. So assessment of their effects is carried out by methods of structural analysis. So we would have learned many methods in structural analysis also, how the beam will behave when loads are applied, how the columns will behave when the loads are applied, all those things. So when excess load or overloading may cause the structure to fail. So hence such possibility should not either considered in the design or strictly controlled. So it is better that you design the structure safely. And mechanical structures such as aircraft, satellites, rockets, space stations, ships, and submarines have their own particular structural loads and actions, which will not be similar to that of a building load. So engineers often evaluate structural loads based upon the regulations and as per codal norms. So we have building codes that require that structures be designed and built to safely resist all actions, and minimum loads or actions are specified in these building codes for type of structures depending upon their geographical location, usage of material, or what materials we use for construction, etc. And these structural loads are split into categories by their originating cause. In terms of actual load on a structure, there is no difference between lead or live load. These are all gravity loads, but it depends that dead loads are one that are permanently resting on the structure. But the split occurs for use in safety calculation. Because of for safety calculation, we are splitting it as dead load and live load. So to meet the requirement that design strength be higher than maximum loads, building codes prescribes for structural design. So the loads are increased by load factor. So we have a load factor, that is a factor of safety for every load, to design the building as per safety norms. So these load factors are roughly a ratio of the theoretical design strength and to the maximum load expected in service. So these loads are developed to help achieve the desired level of reliability of a structure based on studies and in taking into account the loads originating, the distribution, and the dynamic nature. So now let's see the different types of loads that causes stresses, displacement, deformation on a structure, which results in structural problems and structural failure. So we have to determine the total load acting on a structure. That is a very important criteria while designing the structure. So if you see, the structure should be designed in a way that it should be strong enough to bear any type of load at any time. We will be designing the structure for 50 meter per second wind load, but once when we have a cyclone, it is not that it will not. I no, I have designed for 50 meter second only. The building will collapse if it is of heavy loads. So that is where this factor of safety plays a part. For every load, we have a factor of safety to protect the building for environmental causes like this. So the estimation of load, total load acting on the structure, or the total load that is likely to be acted on the structure in future, is accurately calculated and the same should be designed. So the Indian Standard Code IS 875 Part 1, Part 2, Part 3 and Part 4 are the codes which we use to refer for loadings. And American Standard Code AAC 7, where minimum design loads for buildings and other structures deals with various loads for structures. So there are different types of loads acting on a structure, and we have classified that into vertical loads and horizontal loads, that we can also say as gravity loads and lateral loads. So now we will see what are the requirements for designing a building. So the requirements we need to satisfy all the features for designing a building, it should be that is the arrangement, the framed structure or the structural system should be good enough that the position of the column, position of the beams should be properly arranged to resist the gravity, wind and seismic forces. And the analysis and design has to be done properly. And the detailing of the building, that is like providing reinforcements, should be done. Good detailing should be taken care as per IS codes, and quality construction should be even though if you are into design field, you should monitor the quality of the construction as and then. So what are the resistance required to protect a building? So these are the failures which occurs in a building. So we have to take care of these failures while designing a building. So shear failure, flexural failure and axial failure. So we will see in detail those things. So what are the codes and standards used for design of an RCC building? I've taken an RCC building here, for example. So IS 456 is the Bible for all civil engineers for reinforced concrete structures. And IS 875, as I told, Part 1 is referred for dead load. Part 2 is referred for live load. Part 3 for wind load, and sorry, here I've written 1. It is 4 for it is IS 893 1893 2002 Part 1 for seismic. It is a different code, and seismic detailing has to be referred with IS 13920 1993. These will be one of your interview questions when you attend an interview. As a civil engineer, you should know the numbers with the year to answer the questions asked for during interview. So this please take a note of this with the year, because they keep on revising the codes. So it should be like you should be aware of all these codes. Now, the steps in design for RCC building using a software. If you are using a software for designing a building, the first thing you will be doing is modeling of the structure as per architectural drawings provided. Even though they have the architects place the position of the column, it is a responsibility of a structural engineer to go through and approve the column positions of an architect. Because if it is not mandatory in that position, you can always eliminate the column. If you feel that you need a column or beam in that position, you should insist the architect to provide a column there, because for us the structural stability is the main criteria. Architects will viewpoint will be different from ours. So it is our responsibility as a structural engineer to learn about the structural system of a building when we receive a drawing. So the first thing is you have to do the modeling. The second thing is assigning member properties. That is, you will be assigning the size of the columns, beams in the software. So that after analysis, if the columns or beams are insufficient for the applied load, then again you have to reassign the member again, and again do the analysis part. So that is where I have shown here structural system, assigning member properties, then is the loading. Loadings in this session, I'll be clearly explaining you about how to calculate the dead load, how to calculate the live load and wind load. So I have done snow load also, but it is not mandatory in India. So in Chennai buildings, we don't use this snow load type of loadings in a building. So this loadings is covered here. So load combination. What is a load combination as per IS code? I have covered that portion also in this session. So next is the preliminary analysis. So that software will take care of the preliminary analysis, and then we will go on with designing. While designing, you have to provide in with the concrete grade, what kind of grade use, and what kind of grade of steel you have to use. All the details you have to provide in the designing stage. And if you, after once you have done the detailed analysis, and if you get a result like the design is not safe, again you have to go for assigning the member properties. You have to reassign the member properties and do this calculation again. Finally, you can arrive with the evaluation and report making. So this is how normal software designs designs a building. I'm not going taking you through the software. This is the steps all the softwares will follow for designing a building. So now let's see about the types of loads. So there are two types of loads, that is the vertical load. Vertical loads are further classified into dead load, live load, and snow load. And this is also known as gravity loads. So the next type is the horizontal load. Horizontal loads are classified as wind load, seismic load, and temperature load. So temperature load we use only in industrial areas where industrial sheds or industrial buildings where they exit more temperature, where the temperature is very high. Next is the dead load. Let us see in detail what a dead load is. So dead loads, these loads are permanent loads in a structure throughout which stays in the structure throughout their lifespan. Dead loads are also called as stationary loads. These loads occur mainly due to the self-weight of the structure, that is fixed partitions or fixed equipment or fittings. Because of these things, these loads occur. Suppose to build a column, we need steel bars, concrete, shuttering, etc. But concrete and bars are fixed members of the structure, which are available throughout their lifespan. Whereas this shuttering material which we are using, yesterday we saw all those things, shuttering material which we are using for casting the column is a temporary member. So that will not be considered for load calculations. But concrete and reinforcement will be considered for dead load calculation. So the self-weight of the concrete and steel bar are considered as dead load, and loading of shuttering is not. So now let's see about the calculation, and this is how I've put a small image where this shows what are the dead loads acting to the soil. You can see this slab load is a gravity load that passes through the column to the beam, and in the ground floor it gets transmitted through the columns to the foundation and towards the soil. This is how the dead load works. Yeah, so these are some of the unit weight of some materials as per IS code, IS 456, for calculating the dead load on the structure. It is mandatory for all the civil engineers to know at least few unit weight of these materials by heart, so that they can calculate it immediately. Like dead load, live load, they can calculate it immediately. So dead loads are calculated by estimating the quantity of each material and then multiplying it with the unit weight of that specific material. So I've shown you the unit weight of different materials here. It's PCC, it's 24 kilonewton per meter cube. RCC is 25 kilonewton per meter cube, and structural steel, that is channels, angles, that kind of structural steel. It is not reinforcement bars. It is structural steel, 78.5 kilonewton per meter cube. Brick masonry is 20 kilonewton per meter cube. Stone masonry is 24 kilonewton per meter cube. And floor finish, it varies because some might go for concrete floors, some might go for granite floors, or some might go for tiles. So it varies between 0.6 to 1.2 kilonewton per meter cube. So I just want to, I have a question. I have arrived the diameter of the bar and the AST. Can anyone tell me how I have calculated this depending upon the size of the bar? I think you might have learned this, but I just want to know how much you are aware of this AST calculation. Rishabh, is this answer D2 by 162 is what you meant? No. Yeah, Janani is right. Yes, yes. So, yes, this is pi by 4 d square. If that pi is 3.14 by 4 into 8 square, you will get the area of steel. So this is how we calculate the area of steel. If you, because in STAD you will get 1500 square of steel is required. So for this 1500, you have to calculate how many number of 12 dias you have to lay in a beam. For top reinforcement, if you require 1500 square, you have to calculate how many 12 bars or how many 16 number of bars you have to lay to satisfy that AST required. That is where, so that is why I am telling that you have to keep this. It will be easy if you keep it in mind. Oh, 12 dia, it is the AST is 113 square. 16 it is 201. So you have to provide 4 numbers plus 12 number. If you provide, it is it satisfies 1500 square required steel. So that is why these are all thumb rules which a structural engineer should know for doing the detailing. So now let's see about the let's see a small calculation for dead load. Yeah, so I've taken an example here for let's take a column of size 0.4 by 0.4 and height 3 meters. So how to calculate the dead load of the column? So here the total volume of concrete we have to calculate, that is width into length into width into height. That is what I have calculated, the total volume of concrete inside this column for one floor. So the unit weight of concrete is 25 kilonewton per meter cube, and the dead load of column is 25 into 0.48. So I have received that meter cube gets cancelled, so it is 12 kilonewton. I think it is clear for it's a simple multiplication. Just you have to multiply the unit weight with the total volume of concrete. Now we have received the dead load of column. This is what we apply it in the STAD model or in manual design. We use this load to calculate to apply it in the columns or footings to for calculate the design. Now I have a small calculation for you. Now, can you please calculate and tell me? I have given the wall for a height of 4 meters and the thickness of the wall is 230 meters. So, unit weight of brick wall also I have provided. So, can someone tell me the answer? What will be the load, dead load of this on a beam, or dead load acting on the beam because of the wall? Any answers? It's 18.4. Yes. Kamesh and Taushif, yes. 19.2 kilonewton per meter. 18.4 kilonewton per meter. Okay. 4.24, no. 1.8, no. Yes. I will share. Okay. So, this is the calculation here. 18.4 is the correct answer. So, it's just a simple calculation. Here, you have to calculate. I've given the thickness of the wall in mm. So, I don't know how many of you noticed that. We have to convert that into meters because the symbol is the main thing we have to notice while doing the calculation. So, it is just unit weight of brick wall 20 into height of the wall into thickness of the wall. So we get 18.4 kilonewton per meter. This is how we calculate the dead load of wall acting on a beam. So we have now in this session we have learned about calculating the dead load of a column and the dead load of wall, that is the wall load acting on a beam. This is how we normally calculate and apply it in the STAT or ETABS. But you have to calculate all these loads manually. That's why I have covered this simple calculation for your understanding. Next, it's the live load. So, as this name indicates, you clearly what a live load is. So, this as the name itself resembles that these type of loads are real-time loads. So, these live loads are also called as imposed loads. Some might call it as imposed loads or sudden loads. That is like we are placing in a house, in a residential house, you are placing a bureau or a cupboard in a place. It is not a permanent location for that cupboard or bookshelf. It keeps on changing. For example, you keep on changing a chair. So live load is all, it's not a permanent load. These are real time loads. It keeps on changing. So that is the like live loads changes with respect to time. So this type of loading may come and go also. For example, at one moment the room may be empty, so that time the live load is 0. If the same room is packed with people, then the live load intensity will vary considerably. So the live load calculation includes the weight of furniture, people occupying the floor, the type of building used. All these criteria is considered as per Indian Code IS 875 Part 2. So this code specifies clearly about the minimum load to be considered for all types of buildings according to their occupancy in table 1. So this is how a live load acts. See, because these are all it is not a permanent load. The sofa might not be there, like I said. So these loads directly act to the column, and from the column it gets transferred to the footing. So all these loads should be taken care of during footing design. See, from IS 875 Part 2, I have listed down few of the loads, important buildings where these loads should be considered. So for these live loads are considered and added to the total load acting on the member at the time of design. So some common live load values I have used here or tabulated below. So in a floor in a house, if you are doing a residential building design, the floors in house or hospital wards, dormitories, you have to consider minimum live load. And if the client has given any specification, like you have to consider a live load of 5 kilonewton, then you have to consider as per the client requirement. Whichever is higher, you have to take into consideration. But please don't go below this load specified in the codal norms. So office floors other than entrance halls, it is 2.5 kilonewton per meter square and 4 kilonewton. It depends. Banking halls and office entrance halls, it is 3 kilonewton per meter square. Shops, educational buildings and restaurants, it is 4 kilonewton per meter square. Waiting halls, public halls and assembly floor spaces where you have a high number of people coming and going, it is 5 kilonewton per meter square. Warehouse, workshops, factories, it is 7.5. And if you are using any high equipment, you have to consider that equipment load also. If you have any factory floors with forklift movement, then you have to, it's mandatory that you calculate for 10 kilonewton per meter square, because it is a moving load. So it is mandatory that you calculate at least 10 kilonewton per meter square. For staircase, landings, corridors, balconies, it is 3 kilonewton per meter square or 5 kilonewton per meter square. For sloped roofs, you might have seen sloped roofs in industrial warehouse sheds. So if the sloped roofs have a cat ladder and it is accessible, then it is mandatory that you provide 1.5 kilonewton per meter square if it is access is provided. If there is no access, then it is enough if you provide 0.75. Okay. Next is the imposed load, how it is categorized in IS 875. These imposed loads or live loads, how it is categorized in IS 875. They have divided as residential building one table, educational building, a separate table for all these buildings separately. So you have to follow all these. If you're going to design a residential or assembly building, it should be that you have to take the loads they have given for each and every particular rooms. It is not that a common load for all the rooms. They have divided for educational building what is the assembly hall you have to consider. How about business or office buildings? What about a meeting room or a corridor? All these varies. So they have categorized like residential building, educational building, institutional building, assembly building, office buildings, mercantile buildings, industrial buildings, and storage buildings. And this, as the dead loads are individually calculated to each and every member of the building, live load is calculated on the basis of sudden loads on the building in future. Suppose the structure is made for example, if the structure is made for cinema hall, there will be a overcrowd during the release. To meet this sudden load, we have to keep the structure safe. So normally we consider a live load of 5 kilonewton per meter square as per Indian code. As I said, snow loads we normally don't design for buildings in here. So I've just given a short brief. So this snow load is a type of load that is considered only on structure which receives snowfall during monsoon. So snow loads are calculated by the projections, that is the snow when it falls, the projections that it makes. So the projections made by snow at different parts of the structure. The amount of snow load depends on the height of the building, size and shape of the roof, the location where the building is located, and the frequency of snow. It is clearly mentioned, all these details are clearly mentioned in IS code 875 part 4. So minimum snow load on any area above ground, that is how we calculate the snow load on a structure. The minimum snow load on any area above ground or roof is subject to snow accumulation, how much it is accumulated above the roof. That is calculated using the formula S is equal to mu into S naught, where S is the design snow load which we have to apply for the roof, and mu is the shape coefficient which is available in that code, and S naught is the ground snow load, that is the height of the snow, where how much height it is accumulated at the top of the roof. Next is an important topic which is very mandatory. So we have seen all the vertical loads. Now we are moving on with the horizontal loads. So this is the wind loads. This type of loads are considered in design if the height of the building is more than 15 meters. So wind loads are occurred due to horizontal load caused by a wind. That is the lateral load. Okay. So as an increase in using lighter materials, nowadays we use lighter materials for construction. So wind load for a building should be considered mandatory. So the structure should be strong enough with a heavy dead weight and anchored to the ground. It should be properly fixed with footings in the ground to resist this kind of load. If not, the building will blow away. Wind loads act horizontal towards the roofs. So mainly the wind load gets acted on roofs and walls. Because walls, in the sense, if the loads are applied to the columns, it will take care of. It is not mandatory that if it is not a load bearing structure, the load bearing wall, it is not mandatory that we apply loads on the walls. It is enough if you apply only in the columns. So now we are going to see in detail how to calculate the wind loads. If required, you can take a note of this, because you will not be able to otherwise it will not be able to work out on the later stage. You will not understand how I have worked out. So this is how the wind load acts. If the wind suction is defined as a term when the wind load, the pressure of the wind load is expelled out of the building. So when the internal pressure comes to the building, it will push out through the roof or the side walls. So this is how we are going to calculate the wind load. So now let's see the calculation part. So wind loads are considered only for if the height of the building is more than 15 meters. So the intensity of the wind load depends upon the velocity of wind, size, and height of the building. It is the design of wind pressure or the total wind load is calculated by the formula PZ is equal to 0.6 VZ square, where PZ is in Newton per meter square and VZ is design wind speed in meter square. And VZ is calculated using the formula VB into K1 into K2, where VB is the basic wind speed, K1 is the probability factor, that is a risk coefficient, K2 is the coefficient based on terrain, height of structure and size, and K3 is the topography factor. So now I am going to take the code so that you will understand it clearly how I have taken these loads. Is it visible?
Yes, yes, Anu, it is
I've
visible.
opened the code, so I think it is visible. Yeah.
Yeah, it is visible.
Yes. So I was telling about the basic wind speed and the K1, K2, K3 factors, how we have to calculate. I've opened the IS 875 Part 3 1987 code. So you will be calculating the K1 value like here it is. So we have three types of classes in a building. This class A is the structure where we have claddings, glazings and roofing and with a maximum dimension, and will be the building horizontal and vertical dimension will be less than 20 meters. And class B is where the building is between 20 to 50 meters and class C is greater than 50 meters. So this is where we have categorized the building. So depending upon this, we will be providing a class. So this K1 value, we take it the risk coefficient value, that is a K1. Depending on the type, that is the how many years you are going to design the building. Normally we take it for 50 years and the K1 factor is always 1 for 50 years and for all general buildings and structures. So this is where we calculate the K1. And K2 value is taken from this table where this depends upon the terrain category. It is clearly explained below here what terrain it is. See, if here it is the topographic factor is K3 and it is taken from this. So this terrain category is here. What kind of terrain you have to take? This class A, class B, class C we have seen earlier, right? That is what it is specified like ABC. That is less than 20, 20 to 50 and above 50 meters. So if the height of the building is 10 and if you are in the terrain category 1 and if your class of building is A, then you have to take this value as 1.09 for K2. This is how you identify the K2 value from the code. Now the K3 value. K3 value depends upon the topography factor. That is the K3 factor depends upon the topographic factor here. And these values depends upon the terrain category. So if your terrain category is, as I said here, it is category 1, then you have to check for category 1 here and it is 20. And depending upon the height again, you have to decide which category K3 factor comes upon. Normally K1 and K2 will be taken as 1. So this is how you calculate the K1 for the formula VZ, VB, K1, K2, K3. And the main formulas which you have to keep in mind is this. F is equal to CPE minus CPI into A into PA, where CPE and CPI is the external pressure coefficient and internal pressure coefficient, and A is the surface area of the structural element or cladding, and PA is the design wind pressure. I'm going to show you a sample worksheet where we have calculated the wall. Is my Excel sheet visible, Kaushik?
Yes, Anu, we can see the Excel sheet as well.
Okay, fine. So I've taken the length of the building. I've calculated the wind load for an building with length 120 meters and width 24 meters. The height of the building is 9.5 to 10 meters. It's an industrial shed with RC columns and sloped roof. It's a steel structure building with an RCC column here. So I'm going to show how we are going to calculate the wind load to be applied on a building for columns. So the length of the building L is 120 meters. The width of the building I've taken as 24 meters. The height of the building is 9.45 meters. So for this criteria, in which area it occurs. So if you see, we have three categories of buildings where we have to design. This table 4 gives the external pressure coefficient, that is the CPE value. I have shown a formula here, CPE minus CPI. The external pressure value is taken from this code. Internal pressure value we will be calculating depending upon the percentage of wind acting on a building. So this CPE value we have to take from the tabular column, but we don't know which value to be taken. That is why we have to calculate the H by W value here, because this H by W and L by W gives us the table from which we have to take the values of the CPE. So if you see in my sheet, here I have calculated the L by W and H by W value. L by is length by width. Value is 5 meter 5, and H by W ratio is 9.5 by 24. It is 4.4. Now in the location which I have selected for my building is Chennai. So it is 50 meter per second. As you all aware, we have different values for different places, wind values. So which is in the last sheet of the code. I think you all might be aware of. So here I've taken for Chennai. I will show you so that it will. It's there in the code. Yeah. Here is where the basic speed for at a height of 10 meters. This is where all the places, what is the value you have to take basic wind speed in meter per second they have given. And I have taken for Chennai. So it is, you see here, some important cities and towns. I think it is the revised one. So it is 50 meter per second for Chennai. As we all aware of, okay, I just don't want to waste the time. So this is 50 meter per second for Chennai. So I've calculated this as per the CPE value here. Yeah, here it is also. So yeah, now the H by W value, if it is less than 0.5, that is 1 by 2 is 0.5. If it is less than 0.5, you can take out this table, and from L by W value, you have to choose whether it is this ratio you have to take or this CPE value you have to take. So my building is a rectangular building, so mostly it will be like, I've calculated 50. I've taken the terrain category as K1 topography factor, K2 as 0.93, K3 as 1 from the chart, from the table I have shown you earlier. So now I have calculated the design wind speed VZ like VB into K1 into K3. So I have got this as VB is the basic wind speed, this 50 into 1 into 0.93 into 1. So I've got VZ, that the design wind speed is 46.5 meter per second. So now I have to calculate the design wind pressure. This is the speed. Next we have to calculate the wind pressure, which is that we are going to apply for the buildings. So that is where this formula comes, where PZ is equal to 0.6 VZ square. This 0.6 into the calculated design wind speed, I have to square it up. The value is 1297 Newton per meter square. So I am converting it into kilonewton per meter square. That is 1.297. That is rounding. I am rounding it off to 1.3. So this is how I calculate the design wind pressure. Now we are going to calculate how, see how we are going to calculate the CPE minus CPI value. That is the external and internal pressure. So for me, my building has 70% of wind. It is not very heavy because it is enclosed by structures nearby. So I am taking an internal pressure coefficient of plus or minus 0.5. this you have to calculate for if you're doing a big project, and you have to see how your buildings are placed, how much wind pressure will during the construction itself, how much wind pressure will affect your building, because it will not be a safer portion when you are doing the construction, because you will be your columns will be facing a heavy winds at some time. So doing upon consideration of that, I've taken a CPI of plus or minus 0.5. That is the internal pressure coefficient I have considered. And the external pressure coefficient CPA I have taken from the table. So as per table 4, my H by W value is less than 1 by 2, and by 3 by 2 and 1 less than L by W and less than 4. If you see here, think, yeah, to take this value also side by side. So if you see, I've taken this value like 0.7 minus 0.25. I've taken this because my building is a rectangular building, and it is 120 meters and 24 meters. So exactly it comes like this only. So it is like 0.7 minus 0.25 minus 0.6 minus 0.6. It is 90 for the angle 90. It is minus 0.5 minus 0.5. Here I've taken these values for A, B, C, D. If you see my building, I have here it is like this type rectangle, but I've taken the same way A, B, C, D. So this value will be my x-axis, and this value will be my z-axis, because we have to calculate in both the axes, x and z. So this is how I've calculated the CPE value from the code. Now let's see how to calculate in detail. So now I think you have understood how I've taken up this value of CPE. So now this is for my observation. I've created this sheet. So in this theta is equal to 0 for me in this direction, because this is my x direction and this is my z direction. So theta is equal to 0 refers to the wind acting perpendicular to the A side, and theta is equal to 90 refers to the wind acting perpendicular to the C side. So now I am going to calculate, we have to calculate for theta is equal to 90 degree and theta is equal to 0 degree in both plus or minus z direction and both plus or minus x direction. So we will be calculating 4 values for this. The method is the same, but only the sign matters for the wind load calculation. So if you see here, this value I have taken for theta is equal to 90. That is this way. For z, positive z direction, that is, this is my positive z direction. So see, I've given an arrow here stating that it is a positive z direction, and my A, B, C, D is like this. So I've calculated for positive 0.5 and negative 0.5, that is plus or minus 0.5 is my CPI. So I've calculated separately for 0.5 and negative 0.5. So now you will be thinking, this is the number I have placed here is from this chart. You can see this 0.5 is 0.5, this 0.5 is B 0.5, and this 0.7 is C, and 0.1 is D. So this value I have applied here for easy understanding. I'm giving you, I've given a separate building here, and to note my CPI value after minusing. If you see here, I have minused CPE minus CPI value, and I've written here. That is H24 minus G53. And here if you see, I have minused the CPE value minus CPI value and given here, so that it is easy for you to calculate without confusion. So 0.7 minus 0.5, it is 0.2. And here you have to be very careful about the signs here, because it is 0.7 minus 0.5, it is 0.2. If you see here, it is minus 0.1. If you see here, it is minus 0.1, minus 0.5, it is 0.6. You should not take it as a negative and put 0.5 here. So this is where you many make mistakes here. So in calculation of wind load, so it is like 0.7 minus 0.5, it is 1.2. So this way I have calculated the wind load for z direction, and the same way when it is acting from this minus z direction. this 0.5, 0.5, all these values remains the same. Only the negative signs varies when you calculate in the negative direction. So now you will be thinking, why my arrows are inwards and outwards? So wherever I have given a negative sign, the wind load is going outside the building, and wherever I have given a positive sign, the wind load is going inside the building. That you can notice here. Wherever I have given a negative sign, it is outside. The wind load is the wind is pushed outside the building, and whenever you're giving a positive sign, it is towards it is acting on the column. So now I have calculated once I have calculated the CPI value, I have applied the formula which I show you on the code, like CPE minus CPI factor into length of the building into PA. This 1.3 is the pressure which we have calculated here. This pressure is what I have put rounded off to 1.3 and I have applied here, and this is the length of the wall. So now you will be thinking, why I have taken this? This is my column positions are every 6 meters. So this is the outside of the column. So I have given only half the, that is, this column takes up the load only from one bay. So I've divided the length of the bay, like half the column load, half the wind load transfers to the nearby column, and the half the wind load transfers to the nearby next column. I think I made it clear. So if you want, I can show it by. Yeah. So this is how I have taken it here, like length of the wall. So it is like length of the wall into CPE minus CPI into pressure. That is how I have calculated for all the, I have this much number of columns in my building. So I have calculated separately for all the base. So once I calculated for positive Z direction, negative Z direction, positive and negative internal pressure. Then I calculate for negative Z direction, positive and negative internal pressure. And I will take up with the maximum value, because I will get in negative direction itself, I will get theta is equal to 90 degree in positive internal pressure and negative internal pressure. So I will take the maximum value and apply it in my columns. So this is how I calculate it. And the next is the X direction. X direction is this positive X direction. The same way I have applied this 0.7, 0.6, 0.25, 0.6 value from the table here to my building. This 0.7, 0.25, 0.6 and 0.6 value to my building in the X direction, and where I consider the theta angle as 0, and I have calculated the wind forces for positive X direction and negative X direction. So again, I will be having the CPI value minus CPE minus CPI, and I have calculated the wind load for columns separately here. So I have highlighted here because this is the maximum column force, wind load force which I have received when compared to both these table. So this is how I have calculated the wind load. I think it is clear. If you have any queries, please message me in the chat box. Not responding. Kaushik?
Hi. Yes, Anu.
Yeah, is my I've asked for some queries. Yeah, do you have any queries, guys, in this wind load calculation?
Guys, if you have any questions, you can put all your questions in the chat box. You will be able to see all your doubts and get it cleared as well.
Not clear. Okay. So you want me to explain it again?
Yes, Anu. So we can go ahead explaining the concept one more time so that
Yeah.
people will be clear
Yeah.
with the concept. Yeah. Thank you.
So the length of the building I've considered here is 120 meters. The width of the building is 24 and the height of the building is 9.5. So I have calculated the L by W value here and H by W value here, and I have calculated the VB. As VB is for Chennai is 50 meter per second, and K1, K2 value, K3 value I have taken from code, as I have shown earlier how we have to take the K1, K2, K3 values from these codes. So the K1 value for my building here I have taken as 1. Because it depends upon the wind speed, so it is K1 is for 50 years I have designed my building, so it is like 1 here for 50 meter per second wind speed, it is 1 here, so I have taken that value here. K2 is like the terrain category. Mine was a category 2 class C terrain, so it is category 2 class C, and it is 0.93 here. Category 2, and my height of the building is only 10 meters. It is inside 10 meters. So it is 0.93. As per code, I have taken as 0.93 K2 value. So it is 0.93, and K1 I have taken as 1. So K1 I have taken as 1 value. So this is how I have taken it. So the wind speed Vz is equal to Vb into K1 into K2 into K3. So I have calculated the wind pressure, wind speed here. From the wind speed, I am going to calculate my wind pressure using the formula 0.6 Vz square. So 0.6 into Vz, this square of this number is 1.297 kilonewton per meter square, which I have rounded to 1.3. So this is the wind pressure, which I am going to multiply with my CPE minus CPI value. So as I have shown here, this is the formula which I have shown you earlier. In this, CPE value is the external coefficient which we will be taking from the code. CPEI value is the internal pressure coefficient. It depends upon the value where your building is, and it will be provided according to the, and it will be calculated according to the wind pressure in the according to the wind pressure in your area, that where the building is located. So the CPE minus CPI value is what I'm going to calculate now, and the surface area is I will clearly explain you. CPE, first let's see how to calculate this CPE minus CPI value. So from the code, I've taken this value CPE minus CPE value from this code for theta angle 0 degree and 90 degree. So I have entered it in my table like 0 degree, it is A, B, C, D. And for 90 degree, it is 0.5 minus 0.5. I have taken this value and written it here. You can see this. I've taken my value and written it here. So now we are going to calculate. I have drawn a typical building like type, and I have marked A, B, C, D, and I have denoted this coefficients here for Z direction. That is, I have considered theta is equal to 90, which is acting perpendicular to the this face of my building. I have considered this as a building, and this theta is equal to 90 here, and theta is equal to 0 here. So this is my X direction and this is my Z direction. So theta 90 wind direction I am calculating here. So if you see here, this is my CPE value and this is my CPI value, which I have indicated here in the two boxes. So this minus this is what I am going to get it here. So for this side of my building, for this whatever value it is here, so this is the CPE minus CPI. So this is what I have written here. If you see here, this CPE value is here and CPI value is here. So minus 0.5 minus 0.5, which I get minus 1 here. If you see for theta value, I have already mentioned it here. This is the CPE value now for me. And I am going to calculate the CPI value for positive 0.5 and negative 0.5. So if you see here, I have minus the CPE value minus CPI value and I have denoted it here. So this is how we calculate the CPI value for 0.5 and minus 0.5. So this is my after minusing the CPE minus CPI value is what I have indicated here. Likewise, I've calculated for minus z direction also. My positive z is this direction and negative z is this direction. So I have noted down all these coefficients here, and I have calculated the CPI value, substituting in this rectangular box, so that it will be easy for me to calculate these values from here. So if you say, so I think I can use, I'm not able to use this. So, okay. So if you see in the table, I think you might be confused here why I've used 3, 6, 6, 6, 3. My column spacing, that is column to column spacing in my building is 6 meters. So for a column, for any column load, you have to, when you have a column in the middle and a beam at the top, the column will take half the load from this beam and half the load from the adjacent nearby beam. So the two beams will transfer the load to the column. So we consider only half the load from the beams. That is why I have considered this 6 meters, and this is the corner column of my building, which will have a load from only from one area of the beam. So that is why I have considered half the length of the bay, and I have taken this length as I shown you in the code. This formula, CPE minus CPI, is the value which I have calculated and kept it here, and A is the area, that is what I have shown here, the length of the area of the wall, and PA is the pressure, wind pressure, which we have calculated 1.3. So that is how this wind load occurs. So now it is clear, I think. So it is 3 into 0.2 into 1.3. So I got 0.77. So this wise I calculate this value, I have taken it from the calculated value here. I have calculated and I have noted it down here. So all these values are calculated from this. It depends upon the position of the columns. If my column is placed here, then I take this value. If my columns are, if I am going to take the wind load for these columns, then I take the value of this. If I take the columns placed here, then I take the value this. That is why I have tabulated here depending upon the column mark from my drawing. Since it is not, this is the grid numbers what I have given here. So this is how we have to calculate the wind load for positive Z and negative Z direction. The same way you have to calculate for theta is equal to 0, which is the wind load acting in X direction. So this is my building and this is the X direction. So theta value is 0. So I have to take this value that is in the table, 0.7 minus 0.25, 0.6 minus 0.6, and apply it here. This is my CPE value. So from this value, I am going to deduct minus 0.5 and plus 0.5 and arrive at my values here and here. If you see, I have deducted this minus 0.6 with minus 0.5 and my value is minus 0.1. This is how this minus and minus becomes plus. That is why it has become minus 0.1. That is minus 0.6 plus of minus of minus 0.5, it is plus. So it is minus 0.1. So that is how I have derived that theta angle is equal to 0 values, and I have calculated my wind load for X direction also. So every positive Z will have two wind loads, that is in the positive internal pressure and negative internal pressure, and negative Z will have two loads, positive internal pressure and negative internal pressure. Likewise, positive X, that is theta is equal to 0, will have two values, that is positive internal pressure and negative internal pressure. This depends upon the direction of the wind. So that is how we calculate the wind load. Guys, hope it is clear now. So this table we use for walls. So there is another table which we use for slopes of the building. See, if you see this external pressure coefficient for pitched roofs. So this is for roofs like this, that is for industrial sheds, we use the h by w value, we calculate, and we decide which coefficient we have to take. In the step we have it has to be designed in this way, that is EFGH. So you can see here dividing at theta angle 0 and theta angle 90. You can see here EFGH and EG and FH. So for this EF value, you have to multiply with this coefficients. So for this value, for this center columns, you have to use this GH value depending upon the degree of the slope. Some building will have 5 degree, some building will have 10 degree. If your building is 10 degree slope, then you have to multiply the factors with 1.2 and the GH factor with minus 0.4. And the wind angle in the theta is equal to 90 degree shape, you have to multiply your factor with 0.8 and 0.6. This is how you calculate for more single pitched roof. And next is the monoslope roof. So we have two types for roofs and one for walls. So this is how you calculate the coefficient, external coefficient CPE value for wind load for monoslope roofs. Here you can see, and here in this case you will be applying only partial load at the center. So if you see this bay will be having only load from one side, and this column will have load from both the sides. So that is how it is differentiated. For monoslope, for theta angle 0 degree, because this is the slope angle which it is indicated here. You can see 0 degree, 45 degree, 90 degree, 135. This in degree indicates the slope of the building. So according as we discussed, we have to take what is the degree here, and we have to take the HL and this value and apply it. So this is how this portion of the building will be considered as H, and this portion of the building will be considered as L. And we have to calculate using this factors and multiply with the wind pressure and calculate it. So this is how we calculate the wind load for a industrial building or residential building. Normally if you get a chance to work on any projects, you have to calculate wind load manually, and it is better you calculate it manually and apply it to the building rather than using the inbuilt wind load calculation in STAD or ETABS, whatever it is. It is better that you calculate it manually. So hope I have made it clear about the wind load. So can we go on with the next topic about earthquake loads? So okay, I think we can go on with earthquake loads. So now let's see about the seismic load. Seismic load is otherwise known as earthquake loads. So these types of loads causes movement of the foundation of the structure. So these lateral forces shake from below the ground level itself. So earthquake forces are internal forces that developed on the structure because of ground movements. Three mutually perpendicular forces act on the structure due to earthquake. That is two horizontal forces which acts in opposite direction, and one vertical force due to the weight of the structure. This is how the earthquake forces act on a structure when an earthquake occurs. So therefore the horizontal forces acting on the structural elements are proportional to the mass of the structure. So now when we calculate, we have to keep this in mind, that two horizontal forces and one vertical forces will be there in an seismic design. So as vertical force does not affect much during earthquake, two opposite horizontal force results in the movement of the building. So during an earthquake. So the horizontal forces is where we have to consider in design. Due to inertia, additional forces on the structure develop on the superstructure. So the impact of an earthquake on structure depends on the stiffness of the structure, soil media, and location and height of the structure. In this picture, you can see how the lateral forces act on the because of seismic or an earthquake. This is how the forces act on the building. So accordingly, the earth has been divided into several zones depending upon the magnitude of earthquake which occurs. So if you see here, yeah. So the earth is divided into different zones. As I said, it is zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, zone 4. As per IS, if you see in IS 1893 2002, they are divided into different zones. And zone 1 is not there anymore in our fifth revision. It is merged with zone 2. So zone 1 doesn't appear in the zoning level. So zone 2 is the least active region. Zone 5 is the most active region, and Chennai comes under zone 3 area. So these are the seismic analysis procedures which we have to follow. That is the methods. Normally, we will be computing the seismic forces on a structure with the two methods only: response spectrum method and seismic coefficient method. Seismic coefficient methods are like equivalent static forces. We calculate the forces and we will be using it how to analyze it in this seismic coefficient method. So this response spectral method depends upon the modes of shape or model participation, how the building model it is, like that. So now let's see how this response spectrum method is calculated. So in this response spectrum method, now it is a dynamic response of the structure against earthquake. So how the structure behaves because of the horizontal forces is what we calculate using the response spectrum method. That is using the natural period and the damping coefficient of the structure. So here we have certain formulas which we have to use. Normally seismic load is full of formulas and it's a vast topic. You have to if you are going on with a manual calculation, you have to directly apply these formulas, collect the data from the building and apply it. Or if you are going on with a software methodology to calculate the seismic, then you have to give the response factor, reduction factor, then importance factor, all the soil type, everything you have to give it as an input, and it actually calculates using pushover analysis, like that. So that is how you do it in a software. So in this for RCC buildings, the TA value is 0.075 H power 0.75. For steel frame buildings, it is TA's value is that is the frequency value 0.085 H power 0.75, and for all other buildings with brick fills, it is 0.09 H by root of D. So now let's see about the seismic coefficient method. So for considering the seismic coefficient method, the structure should be rigid. It should not be a faulty structure with a bad structural system. So it should have a fixity, proper fixity to the ground. That is, the foundation should be properly designed. So during the ground motion, all points experience same acceleration. So while you're designing for a seismic, all the beam column junctions will be pinned in a software model so that the ground motion, when you're giving acceleration, the structure is having a fixity. So that's how we design it in a STAD or ETAP software. So effects of earthquake are considered as equivalent lateral forces. So we apply it as an UDL on all the columns. Then we calculate the design seismic base pressure using this formula VB W into AH, where W is the seismic weight of the building. That is the dead load of the building. You have to calculate as seismic weight and apply it on all the joints of the beam column junctions. And this AH is the horizontal seismic coefficient. And let's see how to calculate this AH. We have to calculate this AH by another formula, ZI SA by 2 RG. This is a important formula to calculate the horizontal seismic coefficient. So in all the structure, if this T value, the time period value, is less than 0.1 S, the value of AH will not be taken less than Z by 2. This value will not be taken. Otherwise, this whatever the value of IR, we consider it. So for where Z is the zone factor, we will be seeing in detail what all these represents. Where Z is the zone factor, I is the importance factor, R is the response reduction factor, SA by G is the average response acceleration coefficient, and T is the undamped natural period of the structure. Now let's see what is the zone factor. As I am going to explain all these factors, why is it and how it is considered. So this is the seismic zone, as I have told earlier. It is zone 2, zone 3, zone 5, zone 5, zone 4 and zone 5. So this is how it is. This blank area is zone 3. So Chennai comes under zone 3 area. So this is the zone factor. Z is the zone factor. The value of where the ground acceleration is very heavy, so it is given in units. So that is where the maximum earthquake is considered. The value of Z by 2 corresponds to design basis of the earthquake, that is the damage control in limit state method. Normally we design in two methods, limit state and working stress method. Now we are not using working stress nowadays, but for small buildings we still use working stress. But it is like we have limited to limit state design. So here the country is divided into 4 zones depending upon the acceleration on the ground, and these values I've taken from IS 1893. That is where we use it for seismic. This is the code we use for seismic design, and these values for say zone 2, zone 3, zone 4, zone 5, I've taken it from the code. And this is the seismic zoning map that I've shown here. Next is the response factor. R is the response factor that controls the permitted damage in design basis of earthquake. So when you design this R factor permits the damage happening to the structure. So minimum value of R we consider as 3 and the maximum is 5. Normally we use the damping response factor of 5 in all the designs. And when you design a building for earthquake, ductile detailing should be followed. It is a must. So yesterday I was telling about stirrups that hook angle should be 135 degree. That is what that ductile. We have some specs like this for ductile detailing. So the response factor is considered from table 7, and this values are there in table 7 of IS 1893, and I've shown here. It depends upon the type of building here. So if you see this ordinary RC moment that is OMRF building means it is 3, and special RC moment resistant, that is SMR of building, it is of 5. So normally it is not beyond 5. If you see the values, it is between 3 and 5. So it is a unreinforcement building. We don't take care of this. It is a load bearing masonry wall. So normally if you see the values of R will be between 3 and 5, and we will go in normally with 5 only. So these value of response reduction factor are to be used for buildings with lateral load resisting elements, and not just for the lateral load resisting elements built in isolation. This is for the building that is a framed structure. That is what they say. So this is what the importance factor I in the formula. It is permitted that this value reduces the settling of the building. So that is where I normally we take for 1, I value as 1 for all the buildings. And if the building is of emergency building or hospital or school buildings, then we take an importance factor of 1.5. So this table is also is from IS 1893, and this R by I together values defines the permitted damage. That is the R value response factor and importance factor are the important factors to be used for designing the seismic. The soil depends, because the earthquake is the main thing which occurs in the ground motion. So soil classification also plays an important criteria in earthquake seismic design. So if the SA is the soil classification value, which we get it from the soil report. So this SA is the spectral acceleration to be established in meter per second, and SA by G is the dimensional value. So there we use a 5% of damping as per the curves given in 1893. So I think I've given that value also. Okay. So this is the damping ratio value, and this SPT value, that is the N value, we will be getting it from the soil test, whatever we are doing it before the start of the building. So it is categorized into 3 classes. That is class 1 as rock or hard soil, where N is greater than 30, and class 2 as medium soil, where N is between 10 and 30, and class 3 as soft soil, where N is less than 10. So this is how we have categorized the N value. So now let's see about, now we have seen about the dead load, live load, wind load and seismic load. So now let's see what are the load combinations which are used for designing a building. So these combinations take a main part in software analysis of a building, and this table I've taken it from IS 456, where it shows the factors to be considered for dead load, live load, and wind load here. I think this will not be a clear one, so I have taken it up in the Excel sheet. So you will get a clear idea if you see this Excel sheet. So if you see, here are the load combinations that I have taken down separately for from IS code. So if you can see, there are 7 loads which we have to be considered is a must. So when you consider, this is the 1.5 dead load plus 1.5 live load. When we use 2 loads, the factor of safety will normally be 1.5. When you are using 3 loads, that is, if you see dead load, live load, earthquake load, the factor of safety we will be considering as 1.2. So there is a special provision in where when we have to provide dead load and earthquake load. So whenever you see, if I take a earthquake load into consideration, I will not consider the wind load. Any one lateral load only has to be considered in the combination. So this is the special case load where it is used for designing of footings. So this 0.9 case is used only in place where we it's a special provision factor for designing of footings. If you see, I have written here as 1 4 4 4 4. This is the total load cases which is considered. If you see here, I will take this PPT also. So if you see here, this is the limit state collapse. Limit state of collapse. This is the partial safety factor which has to be considered. So if you see, this is 1.5 dead load and this is 1.5 live load. And this is 1.5 dead load and 1.5 earthquake load in the positive X direction and in the negative X direction. Also in the positive Z direction and negative X direction. That is like 1.5 dead load plus 1.5 earthquake load in positive X direction. The same positive X direction and the same like, if you say it is in the negative X direction, you can see here as negative. The same way it is like 1.5 dead load plus 1.5 earthquake load in positive Z direction, and the same like negative Z direction. This is why I have specified here as factors 4. So when you are considering this load, it should be like 1.5 dead load plus 1.5 earthquake load in the positive X direction and 1.5 dead load plus 1.5 earthquake load in the negative X direction. So the same way positive and negative Z direction. So all these places, it should be like the same way. It is like 1.5 dead load plus 1.5 wind load in the positive X direction, in the negative X direction, and 1.5 dead load plus 1.5 wind load in the positive Z direction and negative Z direction. All these will be having 4 directions. So that is why I have specified it here in the combinations. So now let's go to the PPT. So if you see here, what is a limit state design? As I said, we have limit state and working stress design. So limit state design is what we normally use nowadays. So a structure is considered to have reached its limit state. That is that is the maximum load that the structure can take up. So when the structure as a whole or in part is unfit for use for one reason or during their life of period, this limit state condition is used. So it has a relevant design criteria which has to be considered during design. The condition may differ during that is the condition may refer to a degree of loading or other actions acting on the structure. This criteria should fulfill the structural integrity, fitness for use, durability, and other design requirements. So there are various limit states. Depending upon the load combination, it is categorized into limit state of collapse, limit state of serviceability and limit state of durability. So what is limit state of collapse? That is, the limit state of collapse is what that deals with the strength and stability of structures subject to maximum design loads load that is not possible combination, that is of several type of loads. That is, all relevant limit states have to be considered in the design to ensure adequate degree of safety and serviceability. So this serviceability, if you see in the next sheet, it will be clear. So if you see here, this is the limit partial safety factors to be considered for limit state of collapse. As I shown you in that Excel sheet, here this 1.5 dead load and 1.5 live load is the critical load combination for gravity loads, and all these loads are used for lateral loads. So here it is 1.5 because we have taken the combination of two loads. So if you see here it is the limit state of collapse combination is dead load plus live load, dead load plus live load plus earthquake load, plus or minus is that indication like positive X and positive Z, negative X and negative Z. This dead load and earthquake load, wind load and earthquake load doesn't come in the same category. If you are designing for earthquake load, you should not design for wind load. If you have only one lateral force has to be designed for the building, so you have to check which is the maximum force. If the wind load is heavy, if it is a high-rise building, it is a must that you have designed for wind load, because wind load will be heavy in a high-rise building. So this is how you calculate the limit state of collapse. So next is the limit state of serviceability. This load combinations will have a short term effect, and so that is why we have taken into consideration of one factor of safety like 1. So if you see dead load plus live load combination with 1, this will be very less than when compared to 1.5 dead load plus live load. So but we have to apply these loads also while doing a design. So but the analysis will be done for the maximum load combination. So this is what it is for limit state of serviceability. So this is the design load combination as per IS code, IS 1893 requirements. That is the seismic load calculation requirement. This is the must design combination for seismic load calculation. So only one component of earthquake ground motion needs to be considered at a time. So wind loads need to be neglected in the combination of earth load. When you are calculating earthquake load, it is not mandatory that you design for wind load. For limit state of collapse, the following load combination should be considered. So for limit state of collapse for a seismic design, these combinations should be considered. These are all I have taken from the code only. It is not, it doesn't vary for building to building. It depends upon how and what building you design and what loads you design. So this is a combination for overturning load. As I said, this 0.9 is designed for footings. Normally we take this 0.9. Overturning occurs only in the foundation. So these loads are load combination used for overturning load combination, and the member should be designed for axial force, shear force, bending moments in both the along the x-axis and in the y-axis, and should be combined with dead load and live load analysis. That is what we have given it as 0.9 dead load plus 1.5 earthquake load in the x direction, positive and negative, and 0.9 dead load, 1.5 earthquake load in the y direction, positive and negative. So I think I made clear, and I want to make you one more clear detailing about. I was talking about limit state and working stress method. Normally we don't use this working stress method nowadays, but in working stress you treat dead loads and live loads equally. The factor of safety would be irrespective of what you say. If you say the factor of safety, it will be irrespective of the type of load, whether it is dead or live. It is a common factor of safety. But in limit state, you will be taking the loads that you expect on the structure and apply as a single factor of safety to the member, say 1.5 dead load, 1.5 live load, regardless of the nature of the load. In limit state, you recognize the unpredictability of loads and assigns a much higher factor of safety to live loads. Whereas it the dead loads are much closer to what we calculate. Whatever we calculate, the actual dead loads is what we apply, and we multiply it with 1.2 factor of safety. So in the limit state, if you say there are different failure modes, that is the concrete beam will have a flexural capacity and will be and it is fairly predicted, and it will be of a theoretical value, 90% is theoretical value. But the shear in concrete, on the other hand, is much less predictable. Therefore, we have to consider only 70% of the value in that. So in working stress method, the members are designed in such a way that it doesn't go beyond the elastic range. That is, the maximum load on a member can be thus limited, and plastic range will not explore. But in limit state, the ultimate strength of the member beyond the initial yielding and the plastic deformation goes up on to a certain extent. So I think if to make it clear, I will end up with a small story about this for this limit state method and working stress method. We have normally we have three methods. That is the limit state method, working stress method, and the ultimate load method. Okay. So let me explain you with a story so that it makes you clear. So once there were 4 friends. For namesake, I'm just naming them as Ayush, Rita, Sam, and Xavier. So I think nobody is there with this name. Okay. So Ayush starts a business. So with time, he flourishes and decides to expand it to the next city. And he asks Rita for help for transporting his goods. So she advises her to start to help her in transporting. Then Rita, being a good friend, she has accepted his request, and the mode of transport she chose was an elephant. So elephant being a big creature, she thought that it will carry a lot of load, so it will be easy to transport and all those things. But to her shock, the quantity she didn't check with her friend. So when she sees the quantity of load that transport is just 20 kgs, so that is a total loss for her. For an elephant to feed it, and the payment whatever she got is only depending upon the weight. So she neglected to help him the next time, and after few days, Ayush had few other goods to transport to the city. So since Rita avoided Ayush's request, he went to the next friend, Sam. So Sam was confused about the mode of transport. So he checked with Rita how to what is his requirement, and how and he came to know the loss of Rita's money and everything. So he planned to buy a donkey, and he was planning to do the transportation for Ayush. So at that time, the transport he has to do was for 60 kgs. So how much a donkey can carry? So at that time, he barely managed to complete the transaction, and the health of the donkey, and the donkey deteriorated fast. So he was worn out of everything, and the serviceability was sucked at finally. So on the last round, he was transferring the goods. Ayush asked Xavier for a help. They both met and finalized the deed by settling a probable limit. Then only Xavier bought a horse because the transferred load was 40 kgs, which was easily carried, and they both managed to make the profit out of the deed. So it is a win-win situation. So what I want to explain here is the elephant is the working stress method, and donkey is the ultimate stress method, and horse is the limit state method. So that is why we are using the limit state method here. Now, if you see in detail the working stress method, the overall idea of this method is safe. That is, working out with a elephant is a safe method. That is, working stress, overall idea of the method is safe to bring the stress coming into the structure within linear variations of stress and strain. The design by increasing the size of the member. That is what it is done here. The size of the elephant is bigger, but the cost of construction and time is less. So that is where working stress method fails. This method is still used where the cost and time are less important factors than life and property. In ultimate stress method, the idea is to study the load and to provide adequate size of the members. So here the size of the members are decreased using the donkey, and the load is heavy. So when you see, by decreasing the size and time, we have constructed it and it was not able to satisfy the purpose for which it is built. So the serviceability criteria has failed here. That is the RCC members, whatever we have designed is slender. So it can't take up heavy loads. So that is where we have failed here. In limit state, this method is just a probabilistic analysis, and we have two types of design considerations. That is the collapse limit state of collapse and the limit state of serviceability. This limit state of collapse will take care of the overturning, sliding and structural integrity, and serviceability will take care of the deflection, cracks and durability. The main purpose is to improve the performance. Partial factor of safety for load and material is taken into account by multiplying the working load into the factor of safety, like 1.5, 1.0, 1.1 as per indicated in the IS 456. So as to check for increased load, it satisfies the condition, and it definitely serves the normal working load also. So it satisfies the normal working load when the load is higher also, when you multiply these values with the factor of safety here.